G'day, Anthony Ross here, and one of my great passions is to help coaches to improve their skill in helping players develop mental toughness in tennis. It gives me a lot of joy to see coaches actually become more competent in this area of the game. And so in a week or so, I'm going to be starting a coach professional development class. It'll go for about 6 weeks, and I'll let you know more details of that in the next week or so. But with that in mind, what I want to do is to, over the next week, release a video, a very short video each day, summarizing what, in my experience, are the most common mistakes coaches tend to make when trying to help players develop mental toughness. And today, a real foundational idea here is that, generally speaking, coaches under-prioritize their work on the mental components of the game. If we think about tennis in the 4 basic components: technical, physical, tactical, and mental, as coaches, we're generally much more competent in helping players in the other 3 areas. And there's a lot more focus that goes specifically on making sure those other elements of the games are successfully developed. And therefore, what is most common in my experience, or in my view, is that when we see players not being successful, most commonly it's because that they lack the skill to take those other 3 components. They have great tactics usually. They're often now, these days, very physically well prepared. Coaches are so skilled in developing the technique of the game, but then often players get out there and they actually can't apply these other skills in matches very successfully. And it's not that psychology is more important than the other aspects. It's that all of these 4 elements rely on each other to be applied successfully, and therefore we need a really balanced approach to developing all 4 components. And as I said, most often the psychological skills are the least developed in players. And so that's obviously a big issue, major issue, because as coaches, you're spending so much time and effort developing these other areas of the game, and they're not, they don't end up being able to be used successfully. When I think about and talk to coaches about this, most often at the bottom of this comes a lack of skilled education. So generally our national organisations do a poor job of teaching coaches how to develop the psych aspects of the game. And then just for some reason, as coaches, we tend to, we think that the technical parts of the game are an obvious part of our job, the physical elements as well, the tactical elements as well. But for some reason, in the culture of coaching, we tend to think that the psych aspects are not as much of our responsibility. And so I think that's the first thing that I would encourage you to reflect on is the idea that you are responsible for your players' psych development. And the great thing about becoming more skilled in this area is that anytime you are developing psych skills within tennis, it is an unbelievable venue for learning these skills, the competitive skills that are going to help them do much better and become much more successful and improve their well-being in general life as well. So it's incredibly important. And in part, my encouragement to you on this aspect would be to be willing to be vulnerable and be open to the idea that, when we are not so competent in a certain area, we tend to shy away from it. And it's being open basically to this idea that to help your players, coaches are so passionate about helping their players improve, we need to be vulnerable to being open to exploring this aspect of the game and perhaps our lack of competence, a lack of skill in being as good as we would like to more successfully help our players in this area. So that's today's first mistake, is under-prioritizing psychology. It's a real foundation. It's a bit of a mental shift where, as I said, the key starting point here is to take responsibility, I guess, for saying, you know what, it's my job. It's my job to, when a player comes to me and I work with a player, it's my job to be able to help that player apply all these skills that we work on so hard on a day-to-day basis successfully in matches. I'll see you tomorrow with my second common mistake that coaches make to do with mental toughness. Cheers.